hey, if you are a subscriber, I want to thank you. And if you are somebody who has reached out to me with gratitude over the last month and a half, I just want to extend my deepest heart-gushing gratitude to you for keeping me kind of in line and on track with this work, because the last month and a half has been insane for me. My eldest son had something called myopericarditis, which basically gave him a heart attack at the age of 15. And then I had a baby, and there was lots of things that went on in that transition. So my life has definitely been very grounded lately, and I get reaches out from people like you saying thank you. And you know, if you've submitted a question, I have it starred. I will get to it eventually. I don't know when that eventually is, but you guys make me feel super supported. And if you are somebody who says thank you to me for speaking about this work, please do yourself a solid, and it will actually be serving and supporting me too. But buy Imperfectly Sane, the book Imperfectly Sane on Amazon. It's my book. It will hook you up, I think, if you resonate with this work. And if you are feeling like, whoa, that bitch is like out there and speaking out about something that I know to be true, but she's putting words to it that I can't really like put the words to. I was not always this bold. So Imperfectly Sane, I hope it is my intention that will walk you from being in that place of I am hiding behind a truth that I know, and I'm afraid of it actually, into the clarity of being bold enough to speak on it and stand firm in it. So now here, this is what it looks like, Imperfectly Sane on Amazon. Check me out. And also, if you are a subscriber, go to my Facebook page, because I know I've said this in probably another video at some point, but I am much more of a writer than I am, you know, showing up in video form, especially when I'm feeling that isolation. Or that desire to contract and isolate, which I've been having lately, obviously, because my life has been very, like, forced to ground. Check me out on Facebook, Stacy, Stacy, no E, Hoch, because I post updates about what's actually going on, and if I can find a moral to the experience that I'm having, I'm going to write about it. So check me out over there so you can just stay on track with whatever's going on in my life. So, and I totally trust that it will resonate with yours, because it normally does. So, I want to talk about the void between reality and a standard or an ideal. So, I'm going to maybe have to use my paper. I actually did a little outline, which I never normally do because I'm in a space of mom brain fog. So, bear with me. So I've seen this come up a lot lately, where there's an ideal or a standard, okay? And then there's the reality. And the reality is denser, okay? It's going to feel denser, and we have to get okay with feeling dense, because we can never meet the standard that feels lighter than the density until we step into it with the density, because matter is what forms on this creative plane. So I see a lot of people living in the static, and I was definitely one of those people, but the static of watching up top and going, oh, I want to meet that standard or ideal, and then looking down at the reality and denying the reality. Like, I don't like that reality so much, I'm unwilling to get into it and see it for what it is. And my work, this work, is so much about owning the reality, owning your position on the chessboard, owning your responsibility for your position on the chessboard. So I was working with somebody who is having the experience of, and this is all of us, right? At some point we've been taught not to trust our own reality. We have been gaslit to the core. And I mean, this is like a cultural thing, it's a parental thing, it's a relationship thing, it's all across the board. But people like you and I have absorbed that lack of trust in ourselves, in our reality. And we're taught, don't get into reality because reality hurts. So we learn escapism, And we have these grand visions that genuinely feel like our visions. Like we're going to live into that reality at some point and we know it. So we're like, oh, when can I get there? How can I get there as quick as possible? Because I know that that's me and that's my ideal self. And I know that there's the potential for me to actually get there because I'm watching other people do it. And I'm like, maybe even pissed off that they're doing it, or I'm watching them do it and going, holy shit, I can do that too. We have to sink in to the reality that we have created, so we can stop looking at the static of the in-between, denying our reality and then simultaneously desiring a standard or an ideal for our reality. We may live into that vision. It's very likely, especially if we get out of our own way of being in the static. We have to get into the density of the reality. So a lot of us carry this subconscious belief. And I mean, we could work for hours to get to this, but if you're watching my channel, you're probably one of these people. Ego death is a real thing. Sometimes we fear we're going to die. Sometimes we actually hold out a standard or an ideal specifically so we have more work to do, because we think if I do this thing, if I obtain this thing, then my work here on the planet is done and I'm going to die. And the animal goes, no, you can't die. You have to, create these either obstacles or goals or standards or ideals for yourself in order for you to have something to look forward to and keep moving, which is fine. It's just that a lot of times we don't actually live into the beautiful creations that we've already created while we're trying to get to the next level, trying to get to the next goal. So ego death is a real thing in the sense that when we let these layers fall off, when we remove ourselves from the static and just kind of fall into, this is my reality, I have to be the change in it for it to change. It feels like we're falling. It feels like we're going to die. It feels like our work on the planet might actually be done and we're just going to drop dead because our soul is like, okay, I'm finished. But that's just an ego death. It's not going to necessarily be a death, which it feels like. So a lot of times people will set a standard and you're a manifester. You know you can meet that standard, but you hold out on yourself because if you meet that standard, you're afraid that 1, you'll either die, or 2, you'll never get any more. And then the scariest part is 3, when you do actually meet that standard, if you allow yourself to receive it, and notice I said receive, not go get it. If you do, it's going to fall from the pedestal that you had it on and feel arbitrary. It's going to feel like, meh, I didn't even, I did it, so I don't even appreciate it. So I work with people who, from the outside looking in, I'm like, damn, this bitch is rocking life. She's got her own place. She's got this going on. She's got that going on. And she doesn't even see it, right? We get very stuck on formulating the ideal. So much so that we forget that where we're living right now at one point was our ideal. We wanted to get out of something. Now we're out. And we're going, oh my God, I got to still get out of the fact that I had to get out of that situation, right? We do that in relationships all the time. I work with people in that fuzz, that kind of static. So if you can't understand that kind of fuzz, that kind of static that I'm talking about, where you're looking up at the standard and then looking down, denying the reality, understand it in this context. So I was working with somebody who has she's in a relationship that she's now has boundaries enough to say, I'm not going to deal with certain things, which is awesome. But the second that she has a need and presents that need, there's a little bit of backlash. And she's wondering, how long will I stay? She's not saying it this way, but how long will I deal with this? Like, what is my threshold? Like, how long will I deal with this before I just call it quits? And she's in that space where also simultaneously she's going, but dude, if you're not going to give me what I want, we're going to leave anyway. We're not going to be together anyway. So she's jumping from perspective, right? She's going, I have a need and I need you to give me what I want. And when he doesn't meet that need, she jumps into his perspective and sees herself from his perspective. And then this little self goes, oh my God, he's going to leave me if I have another need or if I state this. So she has this one empowered self, okay, which is dude, give me what I need, because this isn't going to work for either of us if you don't. And then she becomes immediately disempowered by jumping into his perspective instead of staying in her own. So there's a cognitive dissonance between those perspectives, and perspectives actually stand in the way of truth because they are purely static in the whole scheme of things. But if we clear the perspective so we can see it objectively, that's ideally the goal. So the cognitive dissonance that creates for her, that is the thing that keeps us stuck. It's nothing else. It's the thing that she goes, well, he's saying he doesn't really intend to do that. That makes her not trust herself. And she goes, oh, well, he's trying. But the reality is that from her perspective, if she didn't skip perspectives, from her perspective, if she kept that empowered perspective, and when I say empowered, I don't want it to mean like, I think a lot of us go, I need the confidence to do this or pull this off. I need this tool or this feeling in order to do this other thing. It's not true. Empowered, let's just totally reframe it to presence. When you are in your presence, period, you are in your power. So if she could stay in her presence, which is, I have a need, instead of pull herself out of her presence into his needs, she would feel empowered enough to sink into the reality and look at it objectively and go, okay, he's doing this thing. Is it a deal breaker? How do I feel about this? Instead of the static of jumping from perspectives of fear of he's going to abandon me because I have this need, and I also have this need, and I'm going to abandon myself if I don't get it met, right? So she's jumping from perspective instead of staying with herself so nobody gets abandoned, ensuring no abandonment by staying in her perspective, which is I have a need. The cognitive dissonance of that, like her fear is I don't know when I'm gonna have had enough. Like, is it gonna take me 1.5 years of dealing with this, or am I like, what is the threshold? And do I even trust myself when I'm being invalidated, basically? And no, she doesn't, because she's jumping perspectives. You can't hold two perspectives simultaneously and actually solve something, have an answer to something. So you can have multiple perspectives, as most empaths do, but to hold multiple perspectives, there are no solutions. There really are not. You have to hold one. Even if you could see a million others, you have to choose the one that you want and then hold it. So the cognitive dissonance that's created in us when we are living in the static and we're not clear, it feels uncomfortable for most of us who are trying to get to somewhere else to sink into where we actually are. But we cannot get to that other place until we sink into where we actually are. And that might look like, it might look like I am living in a situation I don't love, and I actually hate these particular things about myself, and I really wish I could change them. Or I hate these particular things about my partner, and I wish I could change my partner. And sinking into that reality instead of falling in love with the potential of the reality, because the potential will manifest. Like, once we sink into reality, we are a seed that grows. We don't really need to do much after we sink into our reality, other than that thy will be done through us. But we have to sink into our reality instead of holding tight, because we're basically like fishing for standards and ideals and trying to like pull ourselves up to them, when really they are something that kind of makes its way, it settles into us, and we kind of live into it instead of having to go get it. So, yeah, you're gonna have to, I just wanted to say that, not you are gonna have to, we have to be the actual change inside of this reality. But we have to get into this reality to actually be the change. And I know that that's a cliche way of speaking, but being is different than like saying you are the change. Okay? I'll just leave it at that. Being the change is radically different than saying I am the change because I do this and I do that and, you know, whatever, look at all my accomplishments on my wall or whatever it is. You're allowed to be the change in your reality. And if you want your reality changed, you must. Okay? You got to get into it. All right, bye guys.